Hi everyone, I'm Phil Morle, one of the partners at Main Sequence Ventures, and I'm going to talk today about one of our themes, feeding 10 billion people. I'm going to talk about why this theme interests us and why it's a huge opportunity for the Australian economy, but it requires that we look fresh at where our food comes from. So let's talk about food. Food is a theme that's hard to ignore here at the CSIRO. Feeding this country, the second largest agricultural landmass on Earth, has been CSIRO's mission since its foundation over 100 years ago. Working here, we get to see the important work that science silently pursues to keep nutritious, delicious food on our tables. A big battle when climate change removes millions of acres of farmable land each year. This is the problem. We need another planet to feed our swelling population. This is the big idea behind feeding 10 billion people. We take food for granted, but the job of making it and getting it into our bodies is a fragile process, as many of us recently observed during COVID-19 when supermarket shelves were bare. We're likely to need twice as much food that we produce today over the next few decades as we race towards 10 billion people. But we're up against planetary boundaries, and it's simply impossible to make twice the food in the way that we do today. So here's some numbers that may surprise you. Agriculture produces 30% of human-produced greenhouse gas emissions. 40% of land is used for agriculture, and 70% of the fresh water is used for agriculture. We can't use more of the planet. We've run out of planet and there is no plan B. People need to eat. So this isn't just a strong investment thesis, it's impactful work that matters. This is a Marley Spoon menu item, including a Main Sequence Ventures portfolio company, V2 Foods mince, instead of beef mince. This is a massive opportunity for the Australian meat industry to make meat from plants as well as animals. Science now knows how to do a better job than mashing up legumes and vegetables into burger and sausage shapes. We can now cause proteins to change their structure into the heterogeneous experience of meat. At the start of the process is the soybean, which can be sustainably grown by the same producers who farm animals. Soybeans are about $200 a ton. With molecular science, we can create the meat texture that's chewy and gets stuck in your teeth. With flavor chemistry, we can build up the same amino acids that animal meat does to create smells and tastes that are unlocked as the food cooks and caramelizes into delicious crusty edges. We can create natural alternatives to blood that begin red and transform to brown as the meat cooks. And we can create fat profiles that give melt in your mouth experiences. And this process can be made compatible with traditional meat supply chains, so it can be prepared, moved, and sold by the traditional meat industry. Commodity soy at $200 a ton transformed into meat at $10,000 a ton. Companies like V2 deliver new categories of meat that can expand or perhaps double the $1.4 trillion global meat industry, because they have a fractional impact on the planet and they have no compromise experience for the majority of the population who love meat. With breakthrough technologies like this, the meat industry can diversify and scale, and Australia could create industrial giants in the next generation of food production. In the near future, there will be tanks like this that grow meat right next to the processing facilities that transform meat into food at an industrial scale, as we learn to domesticate the cell as well as animals. Science can do magical things in tanks. Insulin, for example, is produced at scale by genetically modifying yeast to make insulin instead of alcohol when it eats feedstock like sugar. The insulin itself is not genetically modified, but it is made from yeast that has been. Imagine this. Before we had this technology, insulin was extracted from pigs and 8 tons of pig pancreas was needed for every litre of insulin. This new approach makes the same stuff cleanly and efficiently at a massive scale, and it's been doing it for decades. We can make food the same way. Our portfolio company, Clara Foods, is making animal proteins such as egg whites just this way. Nourish, another portfolio company, is making animal fats without the animals. We can make milk this way, and we are doing that as one of the first companies in our second fund. In fact, we could double the world's milk supply, without a single cow using the Queensland sugarcane harvest as feedstock. This breakthrough technology is called synthetic biology, and Australia is very good at it. Queensland, in particular, is building on this concentration of talent, labs, and feedstock to be a global leader in this field. We'll need this in addition to traditional agriculture, and traditional agriculture can benefit from high-tech food as well. I've already talked about how Queensland sugarcane can produce animal fats and proteins. The same farmers are starting to rotate their cropping with soybeans to prevent runoff into the Great Barrier Reef. These soybeans can make meat. Producers that farm animals can also rotate soybeans and add another category of meat to their inventory. We're also looking at ways that one of the fermentation epicenters of the world, the South Australian wine region, can use their facilities for brewing other kinds of food. A protein harvest, if you will as a grape harvest. Agriculture, old and new, can benefit from courageously claiming Australia as a food production centre of the world. So let's look at some numbers. CSIRO predicts that the Australian agri-food industry will swell from $187 billion a year to $250 billion a year over the next decade. But I think it will be so much more and so much bigger if we adopt these breakthrough technologies. The Australian total meat export market today is $12 billion. The CSIRO's Food and Agriculture Business Roadmap projects an additional $6.6 billion over the next decade from alt protein alone. That's half of the entire meat market today. And this assumes that this is driven entirely by vegans and vegetarians, just 2% of the current population. And I think everyone will be trying a little bit of these new technologies in the future as part of their diet. So the market's much bigger. It's a big opportunity for Australia to punch above its weight. As a community, if we keep talking and we share a conviction that we can lead the world with this new industry from Australia, there is much to gain for us all, and for Australia as it seeks new growth out of these troubling times. So what do you think? Shall we do it?